The one who bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. Therefore the communication between them is inexpressibly perfect. Our practice center is a net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas everywhere. And my own person reflects on the Buddhas, to whom with my whole life I go for refuge. Offering light to the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, to whom we bow in gratitude. Teaching and living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion. Shakyamuni Buddha, the enlightened one, to whom we bow in gratitude. I vow to avoid killing living things. I vow to avoid taking what is not given. I vow to avoid sensual misconduct. I vow to avoid false speech. I vow to avoid malicious speech. I vow to avoid harsh speech. I vow to avoid gossip. I vow to avoid covetousness. I vow to avoid ill will. I vow to avoid wrongdoing. Good afternoon. Today we're going to wrap up or review discussions or impressions about mindfulness and guarding the sense gates. And then I will ask you to move on toward the study of the Eightfold Path, the 8 factors of the Eightfold Path, in section 2 of the book. So, again, one of the things that I'd like to share as a tool of mindfulness is that when we are suffering, we're not practicing. And that simply means not as a criticism, but as a reminder that when I am feeling what I define as internal suffering or external suffering, that there is a factor within my practice that relieves that for me. And if I am engaged in what I consider to be suffering, then that means that I'm not mindful of the escape. Does everyone follow that? Yeah, makes sense? So, the schematic, the recipe, the scaffolding tells us that our first practice requirement to liberate ourselves, to free ourselves from all of this torment, all of this hate, all of this greed, is to guard the senses. Guard the senses. Now, this does not mean that we censor or restrict what is at the sense gate. Doesn't mean that at all. But what it tells us is that whether it is a pleasant or unpleasant feeling generated by the item that's at the sense gate, we should be able to use the mind to stay mindful and be still and not get caught up in the feeling that is generated by the item at the sense gate. Whether it is, let me It says, and how does restraint occur? On seeing a pleasant form with the eye, we do not hanker after it, we do not delight after it. It does not give rise to passion. So therefore, unmoved in body and unmoved in mind, we are inwardly well composed and well released. Now, it says also, on seeing an unpleasant form with the eye, we are not upset, our mind is not unsettled, our feelings are not wounded, our mind does not become resentful. Again, we're not upset, our mind is not unsettled, our feelings are not wounded, our mind does not become resentful. Now it takes a lot of work and a lot of discipline to go from where most are to that place of centeredness around the craziness. You know, it takes work, but it is necessary to accomplish that in order to have control over the three behaviors, the three instruments of karma, which is thought, word, and deed, to develop right conduct. And see, this tells us, it points us to the fact that right conduct has nothing to do with the other guy. It has to do with me. And the first thing I see it requires of us is to stop going into the encounter with reality, with the expectation that the other guy should behave and treat us the way we think we should be treated, or the event. Because see, it doesn't have to be an individual. It could be an event. It could be just Dharma, just phenomena, just nature, just something happening. You know, someone we love getting sick. It's just nature. But when we examine with discernment, we understand that this happens. See, it happens. It's not happening to me, it happens to everyone. And with that, I'm able to not get caught up in the feelings of persecution, the feelings of bad luck and hopelessness. But I just realize that this is just a part of life, this occurrence, this experience. And I keep myself centered and balanced. Now, having said that, and having acknowledged how many are having good experiences with this? I know some are, because some have told me. How many are having still the same difficulty that they had before they walked into this practice, until they started working with this practice? Yes?
I still have them, but less.
Okay, well, less. Well, what does that show?
There's growth.
There's growth.
Progress.
Do you feel that as you review and see that there are less times when I shoot myself in the foot or when I cause myself undue suffering, that behind that, on the heels of that, does there come this encouragement to do even more, to practice, to make it even more difficult? Yeah? Yeah, you feel that? Okay. All of that is great. Now, ultimately it tells us that if we are able to restrain the senses, which then guides us into right conduct, that then guides us into right mindfulness, there is an opportunity if we also at the same time begin to develop the practice of mindfulness itself, that this will make restraining the senses easier to do. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about some of the factors of mindfulness, the one being non-judgment, the one being acceptance of what is present in the moment. What happens is when we are able to involve acceptance in our relationship with the present moment, we do not experience positive or negative feeling. And anyone wants to ask the question, how come? Or does everyone know?
Repeat what you said.
I don't think I can. What did I say?
When we're mindful and we're not judging and we're accepting the present moment.
Right. Then, in that state of mindfulness, there is no positive or negative feeling generated. Okay. Now here's why. The practice encourages me to step into, to be present in this moment. Without any intention to change it or modify it. To have the willingness to partnership with the moment, allowing the moment to be what it is, without any requirement of it, without any censorship, without any desire to tweak it, to change it to just a little something else, a little something different. Now, this means then that I've inserted myself in front of perception. You see, the explanation of dependent origination is that with contact as condition, when I am aware that there is an object in my external field, in whatever sense gate it impinges on, feeling comes to be. Feeling. Pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, neutral feeling. Now what we are saying is that if I can manage to shut up my preferences for life, for reality, I want it to be this way, I want everybody to like me, I don't want anything bad to happen to me, I want all my friends to be with, whatever our wishes are, whatever our wishes, because that's what they are. They're wishes. Yes?
It's a little bit difficult to balance that, understanding that, which is accepting
Acceptance.
the moment,
Mm-hmm.
the current moment,
Mm-hmm.
which is, as I'm sure you're going to point out next, the only moment we have. But that also would imply that you don't pull your hand out of the fire, because I don't want to resist the current moment. I'm not going to try to change I don't have a hope of stopping the, pain of the So it's sometimes difficult to balance that.
Okay.
Accepting the moment exactly for what it is, but yet we do have a choice in what we do in this moment that will affect the next moment,
Okay,
don't we?
yes, but we can't change this one,
Right, exactly,
because this one was formatted by past moments,
exactly.
and we can't change past moments. So, in a sense, in understanding that dynamic, it is insane to wrestle with this moment, because there's nothing we can do about it. As a matter of fact, the truth is, when we realize that this moment occurs, it's already past. That's God smiling at us. But as Tom indicated, and I agree, that what we do in this moment, how we respond to this moment, is the seeds that we plant for the next moment to do whatever the next moment is going to be. But what we find is that when we are able to plant seeds of peace and non-resistance in this moment, that's our harvest. That's what we get. We get the growth of peace and the growth of non-resistance in the next moment. So there are many reasons for us to try to utilize that nonviolent, non-resistant attitude toward the moment, and use discernment to help us see why we should and what happens when we don't. You understand? Even when people who we love and who have said they love us become angry and rail on us and criticize us, well, that usually floors most people. It usually hurts the feelings of most people. It devastates most people. Why? How can they do this? They shouldn't, because they are my partner, my son, my daughter, my father, my mother. You know, they shouldn't say these things about me. But what do we know? Discernment of knowledge or wisdom tells us here that's a wish. Because all we have to do is open the internet or open the newspapers or open the psychology books and realize how often people who are closest to us are the ones that hurt us, the ones that rail on us, the ones that criticize us, the ones that condemn us, and cause us to have all of the mental issues and the mental funk that we do about life. And we run around trying to set up conditions to make it different in the future. And again, that's the illusion. That's the wish. So, as difficult as it is, if we can just begin to practice on a very small scale, being with the moment without any intention. Again, hard to do when there's someone screaming and spitting in your face. Right? Hard to do. Saying cruel things about you. Hard to do when we think that they love us and we think we love them. Hard to do. But it's about practicing on the neutral things, the great things, the things that don't count so much. If we can begin to just show up in our walk from the Dharma hall to our car without thinking, but just processing what's going on from moment to moment, the movement of something, the wind on our face, the heat on our skin, without any condemnation of that, without any wishing that it were different than it was. But just to experience what it is. The fact that somebody walked past us in the parking lot without speaking, that's what it is. See, that abandoning the need to label, conceptualize, concretize, identify the objects, And again, by the time we do all of that, we miss the moment. And that's the loss of it all. That we miss out on life, trying to make life what we want it to be. And it is never going to be that way. Our wisdom flips us around to make us understand that reality is just nature, and nature has ups and nature has downs. Nature has sunshine and nature has rain. Nature has beaches and happiness, and nature has earthquakes and hurricanes. That's just nature. That's just it. That's just the way it is. There are people who are going to like you that don't even know you, and there are people who are going to hate you that don't even know you. That's just the way it is. So, stop wishing. That's the first thing. Stop wishing. Start just showing up to see what the moment will bring. Stop trying to insert and insist through even present actions, you see. Now this is a trap. When I learned that, well, if I handle myself correctly in this moment, then my next moment has the potential of betterment, more peace, more stillness. But that's not a guarantee. You see, that's a setup. That's about giving Dhamma or saying prayers to get something. That's about being good to be praised. You see, that's what that's about. And that don't work. It's about developing that equanimity, that stillness that allows us to have done all we could do in our own development. And someone still hates us and we still love them. That's the reward. That's the cookie. So, any questions? Any other questions? Yes?
Okay,
Bobby.
so I'm meditating and I have thoughts, fearful thoughts. Then I see that I recognize that I'm thinking fearful thoughts. The next step is to observe the fear.
Time out. Are you thinking fearful thoughts, or are you thinking fearful thoughts, or are you observing fearful thoughts?
At first the thought comes into my mind and I recognize that it makes me scared. I'm thinking of some situation that I'm worried about.
Okay, so a thought comes in which makes you think about something that you are afraid of.
And so what I've been practicing doing is observing the fear. Is that the right thing to be doing?
Does it work?
Yeah, it seems
Then
to
it's
me.
the right thing.
It makes me separate from the fear itself, and
Yeah.
it helps me observe the fear.
Yeah. But you knew that you were separate from the fear anyway, didn't you? Because the fear was something that sort of pounced on you. It attacked you. It leaped on you from around the
Yeah,
corner.
but once it leaps on me, it's like, I become the fear. If I'm not in a meditative state, if I'm not able to stop and observe the fear, it's like it kind of takes me over.
Okay.
So then I lose that sense of separateness. So by observing it,
Because then you are
I
fear.
become less involved in it.
Yeah. Here is something else that you can try also. Why is fear present?
desire that something not happen, that I
Well-
think is a bad thing.
Yeah, that's an answer, but more simplified is that fear lives in the future. Okay, that's where fear and anxiety exist. Now, in order for me to engage in that feeling, that emotion that I define as fear, consciously, I have to be in the future. See? Now, when I am mindful of that, when I remember, whoa, wait a minute, I'm in fear's domain. I'm in the what ifs. Okay? All is required of me is to come back to what?
Oh,
The present moment. There you go. Fear cannot follow me into the present moment because fear cannot exist in the present moment. Okay? Now that's another option that you can try. Just go, oh, I'm not in the present moment. I'm not being mindful. Right? And then put your attention on your breath, not on the fear, but on your breath, which brings you back, or touch your leg, or rub your leg, or, bring yourself back here. Fear cannot come back.
thank you.
Yes, Bob?
So, can you clarify this? Are you saying that you experience are you saying that you experience no feelings, zero feelings in the moment?
What I'm saying is that there is this separation, there is this engagement with the moment and my preferences that cause the feelings that occur. And when I am able to be present without those expectations, those preferences, when I am able to show up in the present moment with appreciation for what is, no matter what it is, then those banal feelings, those ordinary feelings of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral are not generated because they have no engine to work with. You see, there's a search engine required to generate those three feelings. There has to be preference. So does this mean then that I still do not experience joy? Yes, I do. Because first of all, it is the joy of the absence of the suffering that I used to feel when I encountered the obstacles of the world and the obstacles of life that no longer throw me. And when I am there in the middle of that, when I'm there in the middle of experiences that used to cause me immense pain, and I no longer feel that, there's this feeling of joy, there's this feeling of stillness, there's this feeling of peace. So yes, there is feeling, but a whole different world. You're chewing on it?
I'm chewing on it.
Okay. That's what I want you to do. I want you to think about it. I want you to use your own wisdom to see the potential and efficacy of the training.
Is it not possible that we can overthink all of this?
Not if we're mindful, because if we're mindful, we're not in the present, we're thinking.
And overthink in a practical sense.
I don't believe that there is overthinking as long as there's still suffering present. And this is how we started the session out this morning. I said, now we're going to review and we're going to move on. But before we move on, let's find out who's still having problems with it. Because ultimately, none of us want to leave anybody behind if, unless they just say, oh, go on without me, I'll limp on my own. I'll catch up with you. But we don't want to abandon anybody. So, realizing that none of these practices, no matter what dogma or ideology or theology that we go to and examine, none of the practices are easy to do. In other words, we can't go to any group and the whole group is heaven-bound unless someone told them that just belonging to the group makes them qualified to be heaven-bound. And we know that's crazy, don't we? That just because you belong to or are a part of or are born into anything doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to qualify for the gold ring. You got to earn it. You got to do your piece. You got to do your part. You got to make your sacrifices. You got to make your choices as to whether you're going to operate from an ethical point of view or an unethical point of view. And all of the dynamics, all of the theologies and all of the dogmas indicate that there is this requisite to be ethical, to be moral, before you take another step to do anything else. That's the first thing you come into the gate with. Be good. And whatever that means to the philosophy, the dogma, the theology, whatever that be good means, that's what is required of you. So you can't escape that requirement. And yes, you can't tire yourself out thinking about it, but I don't feel that there's any such thing as overthinking. Because if it's not working for me, it requires that I examine my processes, my practices to see why not. In other words, it worked for him, it worked for her. Why isn't it working for me? The one thing I don't want to do is settle on the fact that it doesn't work for me, which then takes me to this, oh, well, I guess I'm just a bad person. I'll never straighten up. I'll never see it a wiser way. I'll never do things better. That garbage mind, right? That ego mind that wants you to stay exactly as you are because it is alive too. That dysfunctional person is just as much alive as your sacred person, your total self is. And it is fighting for its life because it realizes that if you get a handle on this, if you get an understanding about it, then that old self that has existed and pre-existed in past lifetimes will die. And it doesn't want to. It doesn't want to go anywhere. It wants to stay there. So it will sabotage all of your intentions so that you stay in that hole, you stay in that rut. You keep doing the same things you've been doing. All right. Yes. Don first and then.
This has been very helpful for me in coming back to the discussion on coming back to the present moment. Ever since I've been studying under you, you will occasionally say, put it down. When we go inside, you say, whatever you carry, put it down. And Bob's question was helpful in that coming back to the moment is a technique.
Yes.
For putting it down.
Yes.
Whatever you're carrying, anger, fear, grief.
Yes.
The present moment, as you say, it doesn't contain that. It's very helpful.
Yeah, just remembering to come back is mindfulness. Remembering that I am being unmindful is mindfulness. And it breaks the spell. We're spelled up, we're enchanted by the experience or the feeling that we perceive to be there. And we're literally mesmerized by it. We're held to it. You're going, oh my, what is that? That looks great. Seeing beautiful as, seeing the ugly or the unbeautiful as beautiful, seeing the permanent as impermanent. These are the illusions of things. Okay. Oh, Robin. Yes.
Well, a comment and a question. My comment is, you've said many times to start practicing on the small stuff.
Yes.
The things you can handle, and that probably more than anything has helped me, because I realize that sooner or later causes and conditions like some smack inside the head. And if you hadn't built that foundation, it's going to be hard to cope with the big stuff. My question is, when you were talking about fear, I can think about things going on in my life, and I think in the future, does it scare me? Yeah, it scares the crap out of me. But I realize that I'm in the future. I'm not in the present moment. What I don't understand is you can't feel fear in the present moment. I think in the present moment is fear, you can feel fear. So I don't understand the logic behind that.
The logic is that the fear is generated and the feeling is generated because consciously I'm in the future. The illusion is that I think it's in the present moment because the body's in the present moment. And that's where I have body feeling. So when I begin to feel the construct of the illusion or the thoughtfulness of fear, which is mental, and then it gets into this loop where I become, my heart is palpitating, knots in my stomach. Then that physical feeling, which is in the present moment, because this is where the body is, convinces me, gives me the illusion that I am in the present moment. But I am not in the present moment consciously. Just, it's alluded to that because now I've got this knot in my stomach, I've got this palpitation in the heart that makes me feel it's real. All of that goes away when I come back consciously to the present moment. Try it. The strength of all of this is not because it is inherently strong. All of these, we have believed that things like fear and anger and all of the emotions, depression, all of these things, we've given them their own category of fear. We've given them an orange alert. We've even set up categories of therapy for them. But the reason that they appear to be so strong is because we've always gone there and resided with them. They are old friends. This is where I go when this happens. This is where I go when I see this. This is what I feel when this goes on. And so it just, because they've shown up at our doorstep so often, we have given them a strength that they don't deserve. We've given them a place at the table. We no longer even question, well, why are you here today? Fear, why are you here today? Anger, why are you here today? We just open the door and say, come on in. Come on, have a seat, we got extra plate. We're just sitting down to dinner. So start questioning. Start denying them entrance. It's like the old story about the vampires. They can't come in unless they're what? They're invited, right? Stop inviting these emotions to come in. They have no place in your reality. That's the point. They have no place in your reality. No authenticity in your reality. You say, well, yeah, but look at all of the suffering and all of the pain that's going on all around us in Chicago and Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria, North Dakota, Look at all of the pain. Yeah, that's true. But yours is an illusion. And here's a way to realize reality. Utilize these principles, work with them, and see for yourself. That's the beauty of this philosophy that has attracted me to it. It doesn't say, well, believe it because I said so, or believe it because it happened to this guy. It says, see for yourself, use it, and find out for yourself whether it works for you. If it doesn't, and if you review it and you say, I've done everything that it told me to do, well, this ain't for you. But all of us are deserving of peace and well-being. All of us. There's no such thing as a bad person. There's just a person that does bad things. There's no such thing as a bad person. We're all deserving of redemption. So my point is, if this doesn't work for you, and if you look at the books and you come in and say, look, I don't understand this, what does this mean? And I tell you, you go back and try that and it still doesn't work for you, I say, go in peace. Go find the method, the philosophy, the theology, the dogma that works for you, that helps you to transform and find your purity, find your heart, and be who you really want to be, your authentic self. You see, all of the pain and all of the violence in the world are created by the people who can't find their peace and stillness. So we can either be on one side or the other. But don't let it be default. You make the choice. You always have the choice. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Let's sit and meditate for 12 minutes. Next week we will focus on the Eightfold Path. So there's a whole section in your study book, your study guide, the Wings to Awakening. Everybody who wants a book has a book. Okay. So, section 2, the Eightfold Path. Read that, reflect on that, and we'll discuss that next Tuesday. Come here, right now. Be present. Abandoning all covetousness and grief for the world. In other words, you're going inside to find stillness, so leave all of that agitation outside. It's yours. Nobody's going to take it. Just leave it there. Go inside. Be aware of awareness. As you know, this Sangha invests itself, its energy, its life force for all of the people all over the world. And as you know, we've been invested in places outside of the continent of the United States. In a very short period of time, when, Donna? What do you guys want to do? Okay, there's a delegation leaving Saturday, a representation of the Sangha leaving Saturday to go to North Dakota. And things are getting very bleak and very dark up there. The news blackouts, Facebook has been shut down. That's in this country, y'all. You know, the land of the free and home of the brave. They are, they got the dogs up and putting them on people and children and women. So keep everybody in your heart. Support them if you can financially with a donation. And if you can't, just keep them in your heart. This is what we're talking about. Everybody can't go, but everybody can do something. Everybody can do their small part to make it happen. And it's very important to keep everybody in your heart, all of love. Everybody in North Dakota, on both sides of that divide. It's very important that we keep all of them in our hearts. I understand now they've got roadblocks up, and National Guard. So thank you for your support as always. And we'll see you soon. Take some love and him support. Yes.
For those who might be interested, there's some little business cards on the table that list a couple of the internet ways to access the Sangha and Sangha information. Take a card with you if you'd like.
Okay. Thank you. May all beings be liberated from suffering. May we be well. May we be happy. May we be peaceful. Thank you so much for this.